All right, so we are on American Sickness, chapter 11. This is the last chapter before we hit the big breaking point in the book. I'm cautiously optimistic at this point. Why am I cautiously optimistic? Well, because this is a two-part book. Part one is basically describing the problem in America, and we all have seen the problem in America, and it's horrendous. And this chapter, by the way, thank God, another reason why I'm cautiously optimistic, I don't know why I'm stumbling on that, is that it's not super deep. It's not, unlike some of the other chapters that were pretty deep, and it's really hard, and people can't stay attention, stay attention, all those things. Anyways, this one's not too deep. It's not too hard to get through, so we're going to make it in pretty much record time, and then we're going to be done. We're going to put a bow, if you will, on part one, which is the problem is bad, and then part two, what can we do about it? I'm cautiously optimistic about, and what can we do about it? Because I'm getting sick, literally sick to my stomach reading about the problem in America, and we are almost done. Although I have a feeling we're going to be reminded about how bad things are in America as we get to the next chapter. Now, again, here's the caution part. I had somebody who told me that they read this entire book, and I asked them, hey, does it get better? Do we get to a point where we get told what we can do about it? And he's like, no. We'll see. We're gonna give it a look, because the entire next part of the book, part two, is about and what can you do about it, right? So we're reading the problem, we're gonna finish the problem today, and then we're gonna get to the and what can you do about it. Let's cross our fingers that this person was wrong who said it doesn't really get any better. I'm gonna see for myself. We are gonna see for ourselves as we plug into part two. If it doesn't get better, if there isn't some hope in there, I don't know how motivated I am to finish the book. Because we already know the problem's bad. We don't need probably another reminder that the problem's bad. But let's go ahead and delve into chapter 11. And so I'm going to sneak up here to chapter 11 on the table of contents. This is the Age of the Affordable Care Act, ACA. Now I want to go on a little bit of a personal explanation about how I view Congress, presidents, and our money-making capitalistic system. Now, this is I'm having a hard time trying to get it out of my mouth. I believe philosophically that a lot of presidents fundamentally want to help people. In fact, a lot of people in Congress fundamentally want to help people. A lot of people who go into politics, I feel, who go into politics, genuinely want to make a difference in people's lives for the better. They want to make America better. Not like Trump's Make America Great Again. And again, this is not a political statement. I'm not Republican or Democrat, so that probably was a little bit, I don't know. When I said that they want to make America better, that's just where my head went. The point being is that politicians a lot of times start out, at least, wanting to genuinely make life better for all people in America. That's what they want to do. But the system, once you get in, corrupts people. That's my opinion. So once you get into the system, you may go in with every intention. I want to become, the president of the United States because I'm going to be one of the good guys. I'm going to make a change. And then you get into the system and you realize the system can't be changed, and there's pressure on you. And then you take little bribes and little payouts. Hey, if you can still do a good thing for America here if you do this, and you'll also make yourself a few $1 million for your family in the long run. So why don't you take the middle ground? You can't have the high lofty ideals you had coming into office. You're never going to make that kind of change, but you can make little changes and make yourself a little scratch on the side. And that's how they begin to get bought off. Now that's a personal view of what I feel politics are a lot of times. And the reason why I bring it up is this. In this chapter, we're going to hear about Obama's attempts to fix the problem. We've heard multiple times that Congress has tried to fix the healthcare problem in the United States, but every single time they pass a law or do something to fix something, it just gets worse and worse. That's because fundamentally, I believe at some level, presidents, for example, and people who go into office, they know that America is hurting. They know that this is out of control. They know it needs to be stopped. And so they come in with every intention to fix the problem. But then, as I say, the system overtakes them. Payoffs, bribes, threats, perhaps, murders, perhaps. And let me give you an example. And I don't want to get deep into this, but again, this is all preface to start the chapter, but the chapter is going to be relatively quick, so bear with me. I would argue that John F. Kennedy in America was killed for the same kind of reasons. John F. Kennedy wanted to do something for the American people. And I don't want to get into the super details, but one theory, for example, is that John F. Kennedy didn't find that it was beneficial to Americans, for example, to stay on the money system that we had and the gold backing standard and the way that we had things. And so he was going to move us to a different way to get off a certain kind of a currency, which would be better for America. And then shortly after pushing that over and over again, someone blew his head off to stop that. That's one theory. That's a conspiracy theory thing. And what it means is basically there are elements within the government who don't want things to be changed. There is big money to be made. And so a person might come in with high ideals to make America better, to do things better for America. And those people are often taken out and killed because that is not tolerated. Now, there are presidents who will get into office who are already corrupted by the system. They get in there because they want to profit off of this system. They know that there's money to be made. So where I'm going with all that is you will see once again presidents and people in Congress who understand that there's a problem in America and they've been trying to fix it. But the system is bigger than they are. They can't fix it. It is always overcome. And I would argue, if I can have the dog stop distracting me in the background with their barking, I would argue that some people, if they push it too far, will be assassinated. Presidents will be assassinated. Members of Congress will be killed if they push it too far. The system is too big. The money is too big. They're not allowed to do too much. And so the system is out of control. But that doesn't mean that we don't have moments where we see that somebody's trying to do the right thing here, but they just can't because their hands are tied. The money's too big. People are threatened. Their lives are threatened. Money is, you're either bribed or you're threatened because the money is enormous. All right, there's my soapbox. Dogs are still pissing me off. I'm trying to get them to stop distracting me. Let's get this chapter done. Let's get this part 1 done, and then we can move on to can we come up with some credible things that we can make the system better. This is talking about the age of the Affordable Care Act, often abbreviated in this chapter as ACA. We're going to go right into the highlights here. One of the laudable requirements of the Affordable Care Act is that certain preventative tests, including colonoscopy screenings, should be free to patients to encourage people to take advantage of early detection. So the Affordable Care Act was put in place by a president saying we need to curb these spending, out of control spending habits and predatory nature of the healthcare system. So let's make an Affordable Care Act for the people. This is something for the people to make it so that they can have certain screenings just be covered for free. You shouldn't have to pay to do preventative maintenance on things that everybody is facing in America problems. So they tried to do some things and implemented the Affordable Care Act. But as is always the case, the system is too big. Even the well-intentioned provisions that managed to survive the torturous congressional negotiations over the ACA have been in practice diluted and perverted as providers find ways to maximize revenue by gaming its rules. So what happens is, again, certain Congress members who have been there. See, this is the thing. There's a difference, in my opinion, philosophically. New incoming congressmen are high on ideals, but the existing congressmen and women, the ones who have been bought off and paid for years by the system, by the lobbying systems of big pharma and the medical industry, they've been bought and made off, and they've made those deals with the devil a long time ago, if you follow my logic. They've done those deals with the devil. At some point, they were the young upcoming idealist who was like, I'm going to make a change in America. But then they took bribes and they took little, hey, you could still you could still do good for America and earn a little extra money on the side if you make sure this law doesn't pass, but this one does. And they get bought off. And so here you have, again, Congress is fighting. A president comes in, high ideals, he wants to change things in America. Congress fights him because Congress has been bought off. Most of Congress has been there for far too long. The term limits thing comes in. You get bought off, you get big money, they help you stay in office, and you just keep running over and over and over again because you're a bought and paid asset for big pharma and the medical industry in America. So for example, the ACA, this is an example of how the ACA and how Congress people have been bought off. The ACA, Affordable Care Act, barred insurers from denying insurance for treatments to people with pre-existing conditions. Okay, so it used to be like they would try to find ways, the insurance company would be like, oh, anything that you've done in the past that might be seen as a pre-existing condition means that we won't cover it. Sorry, we don't cover pre-existing conditions. And they had found a way to make everything a pre-existing condition. So the ACA, Affordable Care Act, came in and tried to find ways to bar the insurance companies from denying people for simple things, saying, oh, that was a pre-existing condition, we're not covering it. I hope you follow the logic. Before the ACA, insurers had lowered the bar. So this is before the ACA came in. Insurers had lowered the bar for their definition of pre-existing condition to include distant abnormal pap smears, a history of occasional allergic asthma, or the use of an antidepressant. So if you did any of these things that any human being probably would do, or a lot of people will do, it's just kind of normal everyday being an American. A lot of people take antidepressants. They would say, hey, you've had an antidepressant before in the past. That means you've got a pre-existing condition of some kind. We're not going to cover you because we're not required to cover pre-existing conditions. That dog is driving me nuts. That dog is driving me nuts. All right. The ACA banned lifetime limits on insurance payouts, which had been potentially deadly for patients with chronic illness. So, again, they had banned lifetime limits. There used to be a lifetime limit on insurance payouts, but that was, anyways, that was fought against. Again, all of these, the dog's distracting me. Its policies capped annual out-of-pocket spending per person at $6,850 in 2016, as long as the patient stayed in the network in an effort to avoid extreme duress of bankruptcy. So again, people were going bankrupt. People today, again, 2/3 of bankruptcies in the United States are caused because of medical related issues. The ACA did little directly, however, to control runaway spending. President Obama had initially included several ideas in the bill that would have done so, like national negotiation for pharmaceutical prices. To get a healthcare bill passed and to win support for the powerful groups like Pharma and AMA and the American Hospital Association and American Health Insurance Plans, the administration had to eventually cave on anything that would directly limit the industry's ability to profit. So again, a president comes in with high ideals. We're going to do some stuff to help people lower their costs. But guess what? He finds that he has to fight the system. All of these big groups, Pharma, AMA, American Hospital Association, that's all making money. They're fighting him, and he eventually has to cave. He has every intention to fix the problem, but he's caving under the pressure of financial incentives. People who will be like, look, you cost us too much money. We'll fight you. Maybe we'll kill you. And by the way, if you go along with the program, maybe you get a little extra scratch. Now I'm not saying Obama did that. I'm not saying any particular president did that. That's how the system works in America. Given those political constraints, the ACA promoted some programs that might render the practice of medical cost more effective. So again, the Affordable Care Act promoted programs that would render the practice of medicine more cost effective. Okay, so they want to make it more cost effective, meaning that if everything's cheaper for the medical industry, they can bring the prices down and then the people will benefit. It used financial incentives to encourage the formation of novel medical arrangements like accountable care organizations and patient-centered medical homes. In other words, the government gave free money to the industry to help incentivize them to find ways to make it more affordable for all Americans. What they did is they took that free money and said, thanks for the free money, and we'll continue, thank you very much, to make as big a profits as we possibly can. But thanks for the free money, by the way. And it never goes the way anybody with ideals has in mind. Much of the industry deftly danced around the Affordable Care Act's well-intentioned edicts to minimize their financial impact on its business and maximize profits, arming Republicans who called for repeal. Now again, I don't want to make this a Republican versus Democrat thing, but most of us in America understand that there's this general belief that Republicans are all about the money and the Democrats are all about the people. That's probably an oversimplification. Don't make any mistake about it. Democrats are bought off just like Republicans are bought off. But there is a focus in America that Republicans are more interested in making sure business is doing well, that it's good business and that everybody's making money in business. Whereas Democrats arguably have been more about let's have government programs for the people. And again, the Republicans will fight and say, you guys are disgusting. This isn't about handouts. We don't hand out anything here in America. We don't need to give you anything. You need to fucking earn your living. You need to make money for us, bitch. And you need to pay us some profits. Okay, again, that sounds super. I'm not Republican or Democrat. I want to make that clear. I'm not Republican or Democrat. I have voted for both sides in my lifetime. So it's not me siding with one. What I'm saying is I'm trying to oversimplify a scenario. Republicans tend to be about show me the money. Democrats tend to be about show me the people, but it's at the cost of everybody has to pay for everybody else's problem. It's a broken system. Our two-party system is broken, especially when you find out that both Democrats and Republicans are paid for by the same exact companies. So then you have to ask yourself, who really owns the country? Who's really looking out for the people? Okay, wow. This would have been a super short chapter if I wasn't ranting. I really apologize. Let me try to sum this up. Medicare Part D prescription drug coverage for Medicare beneficiaries was enacted in 2006 under Republican President George W. Bush. Previously, the government hadn't offered prescription drug coverage for people over 65 because medicines were always relatively cheap. So in other words, elderly people weren't having problems paying for prescriptions, so the government really never did anything about it. But at some point, the prescriptions, even for the elderly, which are on lots of medications, the older you get, the more medications you're on, became cost prohibitive. And so the government stepped in trying to make it more affordable for the elderly to be able to afford their medicines. Well, that's not good for business, I'll tell you that right now. But as the cost of drugs began rising in the 1990s and reports of seniors foregoing vital medicine became widespread, the government added prescription drug insurance. So what does that tell you? Here's what it means. I'm in the same exact boat. The older I get, statistically, the more medication I'm going to be needing to be on. But I can't afford the healthcare system. I can't afford to be on every medication under the planet. I can't afford the cost of my own healthcare. So I spend time trying to figure out how I can avoid going to the doctor. And I will forego preventative measure testing. I will forego seeing my doctor for wellness checkups. I will not go to the doctor every fucking moment I can to not go to the doctor because I can't afford to go to the doctor in this country. So I try to remedy it the only way I can. Try to get my health better. Try to go exercise more. Try to eat healthier because I can't afford American healthcare system. And that's what people are faced with in this country. Medicare Part D was designed by health economists to cover the cost of necessary medicines with incentives to prevent runaway spending and casual overprescribing. That's what the intent was of Medicare Part D prescription coverage. Of course, the industry finds a way to abuse the piss out of it because that's what they do. This is why people, in my opinion, are getting shot like Brian Thompson, because somebody is tired of the shit. Nothing works. Nothing works. There's an argument to be made, and I told you I was going to stop going on these personal tangents, and here I am going on a personal tangent. There's an argument to be made that even somebody inside the government who wants to change the system and can't might have hired a hitman to take out Brian Thompson, because obviously their attempts to curb this through legislation and all the bought-off congressmen isn't working. There's a possibility that somebody within government who has ideals still, who still wants to fix the problem but realizes we can't because money's too big, maybe hired something. So who knows? It's a nutbaggish system. There's a million people with motivations to have killed Brian Thompson, not just Luigi Mangione, who allegedly is the one who did it. We don't even know if he did. The trial hasn't come up. I told you I was going to stop ranting. I'm not doing good. I'm not doing good about it. All right. Medicare Part D worked just as intended to make drugs more affordable to seniors, but only for a very few years. This is the way this system always works. It did work for a short period of time. A president wanted to put this in place. Bush at this point wanted to make prescriptions more affordable, and it worked for a short period of time. And then the medical industry takes over. The medical industry soon developed strategies to benefit financially from the policy, undermining its patient-centered ambitions. This is the part that makes me sick as piss, everybody. This is the part that drives me insane. They take the very same things designed to help America and say, oh, we can use that to make it even more profitable. They use the very laws. So again, Bush puts in an enactment about Medicare D and the prescription drug costs to make it more affordable for seniors, and it works for a short period of time until the industry says, once again, we can make this work for us. We can make more money by what was intended to make us less money. We can make it work. Every single effing law passed in this country to fix the problem, they find a way to twist it and make it more profitable for themselves. And again, people should in America have problems with the shareholders of these companies who are putting profits, who literally are saying to America, I don't give a shit how I make my money. You make me money. I invested in this country, or in this company. I invested in this company because they told me they were going to give me an obscene amount of return on my investment, and I want that return. And I don't want to care about the details. I don't give a shit who needs to die to get me that money. You promised me X number of return on my investment, and show me the money. That's what's important. Show me the money. That's who America should be irate with, is the money makers, the people who are literally the people at United Healthcare shareholders who are suing United Healthcare right now because United Healthcare is not making good on the promises they made of profits, because God forbid they had a CEO shot and killed this year, and their other CEO of United Health Group has had to step down because he's under investigation by the Department of Justice and may be going to jail soon. All that's happening, and you know what the shareholders are doing? Suing United Healthcare for not making good on the profits they promised they were going to make. They give zero shit that Brian Thompson died. They give zero shits that somebody else may be going to jail. What they're asking is, hey, I would have invested in a different company. You told me I was going to make money. Make the money, bitch. That's what they're asking. I'm sorry. I told another person I would try to stop shouting. I just started shouting again, didn't I? All right. Let's calm down. The ACA did its best to remedy the Part D boomerang effect on patients, mandating that patients would no longer have to pay 100% of the price for branded drugs in the donut hole, but instead 45%, with plans to close the donut hole completely by 2020. I didn't read into what the donut hole is. There was a stopgap measure. There was a period of time in which a person had met their deductible, and then they had to pay 100% of their own prescription costs. And then when they reached a certain maximum out of pocket, then they got benefits again. That was called the donut hole in the middle, the point where you were paying 100% of the prescription cost because you were past the early part where you got a discount and you hadn't reached the out-of-pocket maximum where you get a discount. You were in the donut hole where you were paying it all out of pocket. And so there was plans by the government or by some noble official or somebody trying to fix the problem in America to close the donut hole so that you didn't have this giant wide open place where people are paying 100%. And then what they would end up doing is they would just end up not going to the doctor. Like, I can't afford the donut hole. I can't afford to get in the middle where I'm paying 100% of my costs. I need coverage. So I'm just going to get medication up to the point that I hit the 100% out of my pocket donut hole area, and I'm just going to stop going to the doctor. And so they were trying to encourage people to, no, keep going to the doctor. We got to fix the donut hole problem. It's the part where you're paying 100% of the money that you can't afford, so let's fix that. That only works for so long. There is little reason to think that the rules and incentives created by the American Affordable Care Act, those that persist, will fare much better than those of Medicare Part D without vigilance to prevent their corruption. So in other words, she's already predicting. This book was written, by the way, years ago, and so she's already predicting it's not going to work. It's not going to work. As well as modifications to close the lucrative loopholes that the industry is already actively exploring to undercut the Affordable Care Act's best intentions. Again, the Affordable Care Act had best intentions of America at heart. The industry has no intention whatsoever of making it healthcare more affordable to you. They have no intention of covering more Americans, of making people are healthy. It is about money. Make no bones about it. They have no intention of making it more affordable to you. They don't care if it's affordable to you. The only way they'll ever care if it's affordable to you is if you can't afford to pay something to them and then they can't make money. So they're going to ride that line. I will take as much money from you as I humanly possibly can and keep upping that dollar amount until I find the point that America's broke and can't fucking do it anymore. And then I might fix it, but only because I have to, because I need the money coming in. So I don't care how much it breaks you. I'm going to push you to the breaking limit. Did I say I was going to stop going on rants? I feel like I did. I'm not doing that. Health insurance cooperatives are a type of not-for-profit insurance, member-owned and directed, that was established by the Affordable Care Act. Strictly speaking, these plans are not really new, but more a rebirth of the original not-for-profit Blue Cross Blue Shield style plans. Now, this whole book started with the Blue Cross Blue Shield plans, the not-for-profit motive that slowly got taken over by big profit and were allowed to be brought up and turned to for-profit. So this is basically saying the Affordable Care Act was kind of like trying to return us back to the original not-for-profit Blue Shield, Blue Cross programs. That didn't last for them back then. It's not going to last for them now. Their only real mission is to use the member premiums. Their only real mission is to use their members' premiums to deliver higher quality, cost-effective healthcare. One reason the cooperatives formed by the ACA got little press, the reason why it didn't go very far already, one reason the cooperatives formed by the ACA got little press was that many healthcare experts regarded them as a sorry stand-in for the public option that President Obama had initially promised. The public option, that's literally in quotes in the book, you can see it on the screen, refers to the notion that there would be an offer of national health insurance plan, or that the government would allow anyone to choose Medicare as his insurer. So what that means is, private insurance was all over the place. Obama said, let's make it so that everyone in America is guaranteed healthcare coverage. So we'll have a government-sponsored plan of some kind. Maybe it'll be Medicare, maybe it'll be something else, but there'll be a government option where if you're in America and you can't afford private insurance, there's a government option. The problem is that required the government to compete against private industry. Private industry had no part of it, and so they fought it tooth and nail, and they shut it down, because private industry is not going to have the government competing with them. And again, I would argue Kennedy was eventually shot for trying to push things that would benefit the people. Any president that would try to push the government plan for the benefit of Americans is probably going to end up getting shot, because they have obscene amounts of money and can hire hitmen to take you out. It's not going to happen. You can't beat this system. The money is out of control in America. The co-ops were, for many, a disappointing understudy, and they were poorly prepared at that. Formed in a hurry after the public option died. So they had co-ops as an option, and just basically nothing's working. I don't even want to have to explain it. Nothing's working in America. Moreover, Congress kept hedging its financial support for the co-op program. So they came up with this co-op idea. Okay, let's try to fix it with this. But Congress kept changing the rules on the co-op, cutting seed funding by more than half, and ultimately offering short-term loans rather than grants as promised. 2 of the plans went belly up in the first year. So what that means, Congress was going to help you out. Hey, we're going to give you free money. We're going to help you come up with something that makes it more affordable. We're going to give you tons of money. Okay, you know what? On second thought, after we get pressure from the industry, we're going to give you half the money we promised. You know what? On third thought, we're not going to give you that money. We're going to loan it to you at a low interest rate. We're not going to just give it to you. So again, pressure, pressure, pressure. They come in with ideals. They come in with morals. We're going to fix this problem. We're going to give you free money. Okay, we're going to give you half the money. Okay, it's actually going to be a loan. It's not free. That's the way it works, people. For many of these insurers, the last nail was hammered in the coffin when Congress failed to come through with hundreds of millions of dollars in promised subsidies called risk corridor payments to get them through their early tumultuous years of becoming an insurer. So again, the government was trying to help with free money, grants, handouts to help people get in and compete against the insurance industry, the private insurance industry, to establish some kind of government-funded thing. And they promised hundreds of millions of dollars. But you know what they did? They pulled it all back for some reason. They decided not to hand out hundreds of millions of dollars. I wonder who paid to make sure that those handouts didn't happen, that nobody could compete against the insurance industry. I wonder who was behind making sure that the government didn't compete against the industry. When Congress delivered only 12% of the money that they promised in 2015, many had to close their doors, leaving hundreds of thousands of customers without coverage. They don't care that the customers are left without coverage. Too bad, so sad, make me the money. I don't care. Faced with more scrutiny of healthcare premiums, insurers' primary cost control plan has been to quietly transfer expense to the patients in the form of higher copays and deductibles. So again, I told you, someone's going to pay eventually. You are paying in America when they keep raising your premiums. They keep raising your premiums, and they keep offering less benefits for your premiums. You get coverage. You get less and less coverage every year and pay higher and higher money to them for less and less coverage. That's the way things have been moving in America for decades, and it's not going to get any better. Outwardly, insurers put a good spin on what they aver as a strategy to tackle medical inflation. If patients have more skin in the game, they basically said, those co-payments and deductibles, they will choose cheaper options. So in other words, they're saying if it's going to cost you a bunch of money, you will choose to go to more affordable places. It's going to help the industry. It's going to help you, help us, help me, help you, as Jerry Maguire would say, the movie of Jerry. Help me, help you. Anyways. A $3,000 co-payment for a minor surgery when you're already paying $1,000 a month in premiums is not having a little skin in the game. It's more like having a kidney. So they're basically saying, look, people are already paying ridiculous premiums, $1,000 a month, and then they're asked to pony up an extra $3,000 for a co-payment, which is supposed to be like, hey, if they have a lot of skin in the game and you have to pay $3,000, maybe they'll rethink an unnecessary procedure. So let's go ahead and tack them with that $3,000 surgery. They'll rethink it. And so it doesn't work. People will just not have the surgery. They just won't. And again, that's great for business. It's great for business if you don't have the surgery, because then the insurance company doesn't have to pay for it. So if you just choose, look, I can't afford this surgery, I'm just going to opt not to have it. Good win-win for the insurance industry. They don't want to have to pay for your surgeries anyways. Most of the plans offered through the ACA are so-called high deductible plans, and the law has helped spread this type of coverage. High deductible plans. And so in other words, you have to pay a shit ton out of your own pocket before you even start getting coverage. In the decade from 2006 to 2015, the number of Americans enrolled in such plans rose from 10 to 50%. So basically half of Americans were enrolled in a high deductible plan. You get very little coverage. You have to spend a shit ton of money out of your own pocket. It is what they call catastrophic insurance. What it basically says is you can't afford to go to the doctor unless something serious happens. You ended up in a car accident and it's going to cost you $500,000. Then we might cover you, because then you're okay with spending $100,000 out of your own pocket because your medical bill was in the millions. So it's catastrophic insurance. You only are going to use this insurance if it literally is going to destroy your entire life. I would argue it already is destroying Americans' lives. It already is destroying your life. But that's the idea. People are on catastrophic plans. I pray to God I never have to use this insurance. I'm going to pay really high money in my premiums, and it's going to have hardly any coverage whatsoever. It just covers me in the case of a catastrophe. Forget the idea of going to see the doctor for a cold or a sniffle. I'm not going to ever do that shit. That's not catastrophic. I'm only worried about, can you cover me if I have a catastrophic thing that the choice is I die if I don't get coverage. That's what I'm going to pay for. It's catastrophic insurance. That's what we're doing now in America. The exorbitant prices demanded by the U.S. healthcare system meant that they mostly just avoided any interactions with medicine at all. That's what most people are doing. Most people now are just like, screw it, I won't go to the doctor. I just won't go to the doctor. I can't afford to go to the doctor. So I'm going to do whatever I can. I'm going to educate myself on holistic practices. I'm going to try to get healthier. I'm going to try to get better. I'm going to try to not have to see a doctor because I can't afford to see a doctor in America. While many parents welcome the fact that their young children can stay on home family insurance programs until the age of 26 under the ACA, that was one of the things that the Affordable Care Act said, is like, hey, we're gonna make it so the insurance industry has to cover adult children. You know, just because you turned 18, you're not just an adult and can be kicked off your parents' plan and you go eat it. We're going to allow kids to stay on their parents' plan until they're 26. Sounds good, right? You know what they did? They just said, hey, by the way, you can't get that benefit if your child moves out of state. Well, guess what happens around 18? Kids start applying for colleges. They start going to colleges. Oftentimes those colleges are not in the same state that they live. So suddenly the plan that was supposed to protect these kids up through age 26 so they continue to go to college and they can continue to stay on their parents' plan, getting coverage for their medical plans, doesn't work because those kids are applying for colleges out of state and it won't cover out of state expenses. And so in theory, it sounds good. Oh, you're covered to 26, but only if you stay in the state. Maybe you don't want to go to maybe you want to apply to an Ivy League college that's in a different state. Too bad, you lose your medical insurance. Providers up and down the health care supply chain rapidly devised ways to stay within the letter of the new law while often flagrantly flaunting its quality promoting cost savings intentions. So again, providers will devise ways to stay within the letter of the law and continue to improve their profits. Business consultants offered advice about, quote, this is an article title, seizing opportunities provided by the Affordable Care Act, as one article in the Physicians Weekly indelicately put it. So in other words, literally the industry is like, hey, the government wants to control spending, but let's give you an article how you can seize this opportunity. The government's trying to make it so you're less profitable. Seize the opportunity. They've made a loophole. Let me tell you where the loophole is. You can get around this. You can make more money than ever. Seize the opportunity of the government trying to fix the problem and make more money. Seize that opportunity. Carpe diem. Seize the day. All right. Small financial incentives to encourage good behavior and coordinated medical care often paled compared to the profit that could be garnered by creative and aggressive billing that tested the boundaries of the law. They're always testing the boundaries of the law. So, for example, physical exams had to be free, according to the ACA, for example, but not the attendant blood tests that a doctor might order. So, as Mrs. Kazawiski discovered, the ACA benefit that required no-cost preventative screenings was distorted as doctors now perverted the meaning of what preventative or covered or no-cost meant in the end. So they just basically say, oh, these are the words we have to avoid. Okay, so this is not preventative. If you're doing this, it's no longer called preventative. So all they do is they go, okay, tell us what words we can't use. Oh, we have to give free preventative medicine? Okay, well, then we're not going to call it preventative. We're going to say this is something else. We'll give it a different word, therefore it doesn't fall under the word preventative. It's just a shell game, people. They just change the words. Anytime they put a law in place to fix the problem, they go, oh, what word can't we use? We won't call it that anymore. We'll do the same thing we've always been doing, but we just won't call it that anymore. And in fact, we'll probably find a way to make more money on it now that we've called it something else. There is no Supreme Court of the ACA to parse its original intent. What does that mean? In America, when a court system gets it wrong, when a court system says, hey, so-and-so is guilty of committing this crime, there's an appellate court, there's a Supreme Court, there's a higher court that can say, did the lower court get it right? And that court is looking out for the law. Was the law interpreted correctly? There is no Supreme Court or appellate court for the Affordable Care Act to parse what the Affordable Care Act's intent was. So nobody comes in and says, you're not really, you found a way to circumnavigate the Affordable Care Act's purpose. It wasn't meant that way. So we're going to make you do what it was meant. There's nothing that does that. Nobody comes in and says, that's not what the intent was. You guys are breaking the intent. There is nothing like that. So it just becomes out of control. Did I say this is going to be quick? I did. I thought we were going to be done in 20 minutes. We're at 34. Let's keep going. We're almost done. We almost are done. There was no Supreme Court of the ACA. We covered that. The doctor's fees were covered, but the room rental or the anesthesiologist charges were not covered. They just changed how to bill you. That's all. That's all. By the way, the last paragraph is highlighted in blue down here. I think that's going to be the last paragraph, and we're going to be done. So we got a couple of yellows, and then we got a blue paragraph, and we're out. Under the ACA, the percentage of uninsured Americans dropped from 18% in 2013 to 11%. So what that means is for a while, the Affordable Care Act worked. Uninsured Americans, the number of people who had no insurance, dropped. There was nearly 20% of Americans had no insurance in 2013, but after the Affordable Care Act, that dropped to 11%, which is an improvement. But there are still more than 20 million people without insurance. Despite the implementation of the Affordable Care Act, polls indicate that a growing number of Americans were having trouble affording medical care or avoiding seeing were avoiding seeing a doctor for fear of the cost. That's how we take care of things in America now. The price has gotten so ridiculous that Americans just try to find ways to not see a doctor. For God's sake, I pray I don't have to see a doctor. I can't afford to see a doctor in this country. And they're hiding it. They're hiding it. They're making it. They don't want you to know that people are avoiding getting care in America because they can't afford it. They're just be like, hey, everything's fine. The people who come to us, they're getting care. What they're not paying attention is how many people aren't coming to you anymore because they can't afford to come to you. They can't afford to do business with the devil. By 2016, some large insurers announced that they could no longer afford the Affordable Care Act plans because they were losing money on them. So now all of a sudden, insurers who are trying to go into the business and use some of those free grants and free money to compete against the insurance industry find that they can't. They can't make money. They're not getting the money they were promised by Congress. They're losing their ass. They can't compete with big business, and so they're shutting down. It's a failure. The system has failed. Last paragraph, and then we're out. This U.S. healthcare system gradually evolved over sector by sector, hospital by hospital, doctor by doctor. What the players are doing is, technically speaking, perfectly legal. Participants in the market respond to the incentives and opportunities that the market allows. That's what they're supposed to do. Each component of the system is genuinely convinced that it's not so bad, not responsible for our $3 trillion medical bill. Someone else is to blame. Drug spending is only 10% of the national health budget. Nursing homes are only responsible for 5% of the health costs. Payments to doctors are only 20%. Dermatology accounts for only 4% of Medicare expenditures. Each segment of the medical industry is convinced that its charges are reasonable, but put all the little excesses together and you get a healthcare that is much worse and much costlier than the sum of its parts. We, as the patients, are stuck in the middle, and it seems that we've reached a critical condition. Yes, so this is what they're saying. Every single person, this was almost word for word out of Andrew Whitty's mouth. Andrew Whitty, the CEO of United Healthcare, when called on the carpet in national TV about the out of control profit margins of his company, basically said something like this: hey, look, we didn't create the system. Nobody would create a system like it exists today. It's not our fault. We're just working within the boundaries of the system that already exists. I agree, it's a broken system, but it's not our fault. We didn't create the system. We're just working with the system. So, sorry. And by the way, we're only a small piece of this big monster. So it really isn't our fault. And again, there are those who will argue that Brian Thompson, for example, isn't responsible for anything. He's just doing his job. He's making money for his shareholders. Brian Thompson didn't create the medical problem in America. He didn't create the industry. He's just doing his job, making money for shareholders. He's not the problem, people. That's what the argument is. He's not the problem. He's just doing his little small piece. Everyone is just saying, hey, I'm just doing my small piece. I can't fix the big problem. Go fix the big problem. I'm not the big problem. Go fix the big problem. How do they try to fix the big problem? By passing legislation. What happens when they pass legislation? They get around it, they circumnavigate it, they make it more profitable every single time. That is the end of part one. We are now going to move in the next time we get together. Part two, diagnosis and treatment. Prescriptions for taking back our health care. It's a big promise. Is she going to show us, Elizabeth Rosenthal, how to take back the American healthcare system? Somebody's already told me, nope, she's not. Let's pray that it does. Let's take a look, by the way, just ending here, since we have a few minutes. We're only at 38 minutes. I sometimes go an hour. Here's chapter 2, or part 2. You can see it's relatively small. I've got it on the screen. The high price of patient complacency, doctor's bills, hospital bills. Why does those two chapters sound like we're just going to hear more about how bad the hospital bills and doctor bills? Hopefully she's going to explain to us how to parse doctor's bills and hospital bills and how to fight back. Insurance costs, drug and medical device costs, bills and tests and ancillary service, better healthcare in the digital age, and then we end the book. So those are it. It's 6 chapters. That's all. We had 11 chapters here. 11 chapters of the problem. We have 6 chapters giving us suggestions on how to fix it. I'm cautiously optimistic that in those 6 chapters, maybe we'll get something we can do that doesn't require somebody having to get shot in America. And that isn't going to fix anything either. But anyways, thanks for listening to my rant if you did. If you didn't, hope you stay tuned for at least the beginning of part 2, where supposedly we're going to learn some strategies on how we can fight back. Talk to you later.